Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here, and Torchlight Infinite's Outlaw season is coming really soon, and I am super excited, and I want to talk today about the new crafting mechanic that they are putting into the game. Yes, we did get a little bit of a hint preview with the reveal, but the Torchlight DB or the TLI DB just got updated with all of the new sequences we're gonna be able to add to our weapons, which is just absolutely wild. Some of them are like super cracked. And we're gonna go through and talk about all of them real quick, but pretty much how this is gonna work. You'll be able to either craft or find from the season mechanic weapons or shields that have these types of mods on them. So stuff like additional spell damage, for example, armor penetration. And I think a lot of these basic ones are going to be ones that you're going to find while going through the campaign. But you could also go and kind of do this crafting manually, which you can kind of see a little bit of information here on the DB. Basically, there's two different types of R&D where you can craft on stuff. Basically, once initiated, each round presents a random selection of colored chips to choose from. And if the selected chips color match in any order a target sequence, you succeed and you get the weapon effect of the corresponding effects, which kind of seems like it's very gambly. You're kind of be like looking for the sequences that you're looking for with particular colors, which might be a little bit of a pain. Now, there are two types of R&D. There's basic R&D and in-depth R&D. Basic R&D, you only require to use 3 chips. Our in-depth gives you 4, and then you're going to basically only get basic and intermediate sequences from the basic R&D, although advanced sequences can only come from the in-depth R&D. So I think for the most part, you're probably just going to be using the basic R&D, so you have like a really choice weapon towards the end game. I think I'm going to start throwing those advanced sequences on there. Kind of hoping that we'll be able to find weapons that have advanced sequences just built into them automatically, that add a lot of value and a lot of dopamine drops, which would be pretty cool. Now, they have a huge list here of all of the sequences, and this was kind of like a little too much for me, and there's just really a lot. So I just went and put this into my document. I'll put a link to this down below. I started kind of like marking ones that I thought were pretty interesting. Now, we already kind of talked about like kind of what you're going to see as a basic mod here, like bows, like additional damage for weapons, for example. This is the type of stuff like where if you get that on your weapon, that's like a huge damage source. That's really going to make that particular weapon just kind of carry for a long time. And I wouldn't be surprised to see that this works similar to the Sandlord mechanic, where you like interact with the mechanic, kill enemies, they drop a 3 affix weapon, and then this is tacked on top of that. So you just have like a crazy 4 affix weapon that could carry you quite a bit farther into the campaign than you normally would. And then probably eventually in the like out of like you would have to start crafting your own stuff, but hopefully we continue to find these ones with mods on them. It's one of the things that I was kind of annoyed about with last season is that you get like belts with mods on them for a while, get belts with mods, and then the belts just kind of disappeared, didn't really get anything anymore, which kind of felt bad. Now, going through some of these that I think are pretty crazy, you have like on two-handed weapons, and it seems like all two-handed weapons are pretty much like doubled for the most part. Some of them are not 100%, but like 20% all stats as a basic sequence seems pretty crazy for early stat stacking. You also have like the chance to explode. So enemies have a 40% chance to explode on defeat, doing 5% of their max life. And explode can just be really, really powerful. And since this is just an intermediate, sequence here, you're pretty much going to have access to this a lot earlier than you normally would have explode. There's also stuff like getting flat physical damage to the gear and additional max damage. Just what we needed, even more flat physical to the gear. So we just have like an absolutely insane DPS weapon. I could definitely see using this, especially early on, especially if you're playing like the Thea build from last season with split shot, pretty strong for that. We can also get stuff like fire damage to the gear and +2 tenacity blessings on a two-hander, which is very, very nice, which means you can have a 6 blessing weapon here. But don't worry, it's going to get a little bit crazier later on. Next up, there are a lot of aura effect things in here. So for example, on bow, you're getting +250% precise projectiles aura effect, and then -300, -30% precise projectile sealed mana compensation. This is kind of wild because it's going to take like precise projectiles from like 40% damage multiplier to I think 140. So yeah, that's just a lot of damage. And once again, this is an intermediate sequence, so pretty easy to get. We also have stuff like negative 40% damage for weapons, 60% additional attack for just attack damage, really good for stat stackers. We have flat erosion and deterioration chance. We have +2 tenacity, +2 focus, and -2 agility blessing. So yeah, you can get a weapon that's like 8 blessings, I guess, and -2 of another one, which is just really crazy. And this is an intermediate affix. We haven't gotten the good stuff yet, so hold on here. Now, one of the advanced sequences you'll notice here right off the bat is we get basically the stat stacking stuff. So on a two-handed weapon, we're at 4 to 6 fire damage to attacks per 10 strength, 1 to 9 lightning damage to attacks per 10 dex, 2 to 4 physical damage to attacks per 2,550 armor, and we also can get 16 to 20 physical damage to attacks for every 3,300 life consumed recently, which stacks up to 200 times, and it seals your mana in your life, and it consumes 10% of your current life when casting a skill. So it kind of does a lot of work there. Severed Wrist is going to give you 100% increased elemental damage for the gear, but it's going to basically turn off the physical damage for the gear. And I guess negative 100%. You probably need to get more and counteract that, but I don't know why you would. We also can get Apocalypse, which is 10% additional damage and negative 15% damage taken, I'm assuming, for every stack of any blessings. This is like better than becoming block capped in terms of DR. There's a lot of damage. So absolutely just stinking wild. We have the Eternal Moment one. We have a 50% chance to get 2 stacks of low tier Eternal Morale, Nightmare, and Shadow, which is just like different buffs from the Eternity, Giga belt. So this is kind of cool to be able to get that on your weapon as well, and they do stack together. Stray's Return makes it so that attack horizontal projectiles will now return to you and hit enemies on the way back and do more damage. So it's very, very solid here to get that kind of stuff. You can also get 100% points of fixed order with 25% increased order effect. And that's an advanced sequence. That's pretty much what we see on bow. A lot of these are going to be very similar for other two-handers. A lot of these are just generally pretty close for different weapon types. On Cane here, for example, though, you can see that you get precise projectiles to 150% as opposed to the 250 that we saw on the bow. We don't know if you can stack multiple of these, which would be kind of cool, but we'll have to find out about that. Likewise, you can see here that the stat stacking is reduced. We're getting 2 to 3 fire damage per 10, as opposed to up here, we're getting 4 to 6. And so the two-handers are basically twice as good for most things. Claws are going to be getting the Fearless aura, and then moving down to shields is kind of where things start to go crazy off the rails. So dex shields and pretty much all shields, one of the base stats you can get is just +3 max res. There's a lot of good stuff in here, just like a lot of different res, block ratio, movement speed, crit and stuff. But let's talk about how there's like negative 20% additional elemental damage on shield. That's pretty, powerful. 30% of physical into a random element does nerf your armor a little bit, but that's fine. We also have 15% armor effective rate for non-physical, which is nice. Spell damage won't reduce by evasion, by default, and you get 3,000 gear evasion onto your shield. So you get a very high evasion piece there. You also get energy shield starts to charge when blocking, and you get faster shield charge. That's just pretty wild. Typically trying to get like the shield charge or the energy shield charge starting is kind of hard to do, or this is only a few ways to do it. So now we have another way to do it. And then comes to what I think is probably going to be the one I'm going to use on the new Rosa 2 is the Enchanted Spring. It's going to add 10 to 20 physical damage to attacks and spells for every 950 mana consumed recently, which means if you can somehow find a way to consume 190,000 mana you're going to be getting a lot of damage because that's basically 15 times 200. So you're getting about 3,000 flat physical added to your attacks or spells, which pretty darn good, especially good for just a shield, just a single line on a shield, and you still get other stuff. There's also Foundation, where you get all passive skill slots are supported by level 30 Restrain, and also the first passive is supported by level 30 Seal Conversion. So it just makes, getting all those auras in a lot easier to do. Pretty good to have that. You can also go and get block ratio set to 70%, which is absolutely nuts. You can also go and get Saint, which gives you negative 50% damage over time taken. We're not sure if the new S20 is going to be scary with damage over time, but pretty cool to have. You also become immune to crowd control effects if you've blocked recently. Not bad. Thunder Baptism makes it so that the 100% of erosion damage is turned into lightning, and you get plus 20 max lightning res. Yeah. Just throw that in there, a little extra, a little, spice on there if you need to. You can also have your armors fixed at 50% of your evasion. So if you're planning on evasion stacking, you can then turn that evasion into armor as well for more defensive layer. There's Prophecy of Immortality. You get 50% of injury buffer, and you restore 15% of your missing life when taking hit damage. There's a short interval there, and same thing with Energy Shield, which is just pretty wild. Like, a lot of these are just very tanky. I have a feeling people are going to craft on things and then just resell them if it's not the advanced affix that they want, because a lot of these are still very good, even if it's not the one that you wanted. Just kind of moving forward here, we still see they have the same stuff across different shields. On rods here, you're getting a Radical Order effect, and there's a lot of different minion kind of stuff here. So as I believe this is an intermediate sequence, you get minion skill level and max minion life. You get stuff like minion damage for every spirit magus you have, stacks up to 5 times. You can get negative minion crit for more critical strike damage. You can go and get level 20 Dark Gate whenever you're moving every 2 seconds. Just kind of blasting that out automatically. You get minion life regen. You can get +7 minion skill level. And then while moving, it inflicts 1 stack of slow on yourself. But the slow is way more effective. So I don't know if you need to become immune there. For every 50% life lost by a minion in the last second, you get 35% additional damage, which sounds really insane. You could potentially get a lot of damage from that. And then 10% additional minion life regeneration and speed. You can go and get 10% additional minion damage for every minion you have. I think we talked about that one already. Stacks up to 7 times. You can get negative 20% additional minion max energy shield with more minion max life. You can get negative 50% self aura effect. And then minions get 15% additional damage for each type of aura they're affected by. So you're not really planning on using the aura on yourself anyways. And so you can have a lot of additional damage going on to your minions with this, which is just absolutely crazy. You can also get trigger level 30 Entangled Pain and Timid Curse when minions deal damage. And then minions can cast 1 additional curse. So if you're doing some sort of damage over time build with minions, pretty much just sets up your curses for you right there. And then you also get 100% additional hit damage for skills cast by minions spell burst, which is, pretty wild as well. And then we've seen Heart of Corona in the preview, where Spirit Magus skills can be equipped in active slots. And you get 25% Origin of Magus effect for every aura that affects you, and then 25% aura effect for every Magus that affects you. Just really, really good. Now going to Scepters, which is kind of the damage over time stuff. When you see they have more damage over time things, you can get base things like base trauma, base ignite, base wilt. All of that is really good. Just to kind of get more base stuff. You get -1 Terra charge stacks for +1 charge quantity, which is pretty good. You can get blur effect on there, which is probably not as good as some of the other ones. You can also get -12 all resistance when the enemy has max affliction. Just nice penetration there. And then enemies have chance to explode, inflicts 100 affliction, just pops off immediately. Reaping duration, but it reaps 1% of damage over time when dealing damage over time, which has only a 2-second cooldown. Absolutely just wild and insane. Pretty darn good. Inflicting damage, you deal 5% additional damage for every type of ailment the enemy has. Just pair that up with dirty tricks and put on all of the different ailment types on them you possibly can. That's a lot of damage, man. Deep pain aura effect, auto triggering black hole, auto triggering entangled pain curse on dealing damage. It's pretty wild stuff, man. We also go and get black sheep when dealing damage over time, 25% additional damage over time for every curse effect on the enemy. And you can cast -1 additional curses. So you probably get this up to like +3 curses, which, just slapping all of the curses on the enemy. That's pretty effective, especially if you're playing, a skill that consumes curses. Probably pretty cool. You can go and get yourself movement speed while standing on a terrorist skill, and more skill area for those terras. We can get a refreshing blur on gaining blur, and then blur gains the damage over time for 3% damage over time for every 1 blur rating. So you can get like 300% damage over time from this, and just keep your blur up permanently, which is really fun. We can go and get deep pain. Now also has 100% reaping cooldown recovery speed, which then can probably be paired with the 150% aura effect of deep pain if you're using 2 scepters. So that's a pretty wild combination. You can also have, when dealing damage over time, restores 10% of missing life and energy shield. You get 50 affliction inflicted per second. There's -80% additional duration for ailments inflicted by crits, but you get 100 or 1% additional ailment damage per 100 critical strike rating, which is pretty wild because critical strike rating is like, has a base like I think 500. You can like multiply it up. The eternity stuff here, and then the fire flood triggers level 20 scorching pulse when moving. It's a cooldown of 0.6 seconds. There's really just like a lot of really good stuff, really good options here. Just really going crazy. And for the most part, that's like a lot of the main stuff, I think. Some of these are going to be like pretty repetitive here, depending on the damage type, but there are definitely a few more that we'll talk about. So like staff, for example, can get 50% additional hit damage for skills cast by spell bursts, which is pretty nice for intermediate sequence. We can get like flat physical to spells, and all of physical is converted to cold, which is pretty nice to get. Get things like +4 fire skill level and inflicts affliction when dealing fire damage. The main skill is supported by level 40 control spell. That's a pretty nice intermediate one. Reminder, intermediate ones are going to be a lot easier to get than the advanced ones. You get up to 250% spell amplification aura. Very insane. Surging has, when using a skill, 50% chance to instantly gain 2 spell burst charges every 0.03 seconds. So, get lots of spell burst stuff that way. You don't necessarily need to use Surging Inspiration anymore. It's pretty crazy. Thunderbringer will add 10% of lost mana as lightning damage to spells. So if you're like doing some sort of mana stacker, that could be a lot of mana and a lot of damage added. Phantom, for example, has for every 10% of life sealed at full mana, main skills level +1, but you get -50% spell amplification aura, which is a little bit rough for sure. And what else do we have here? Blind Warlock adds 100% of physical damage as a random element, and you are blinded. I think you can also become immune to blind from belt, So this could potentially be like just 100% more damage on a two-handed axe of a random element, which could be pretty useful. And that's pretty much it for the ones that I kind of like saw here. I probably missed something really insane, but for the most part, you know, a lot of these are going to be kind of repeaty at this point. And I'm just kind of like looking through to see if I see anything crazy real quick. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that. I can put a link to this down below. It's going to be absolutely insane for a season. Really looking forward to crafting all this stuff. I really hope it's not overly expensive to do the advanced mods. Hope that the advanced mods drop in maps so we have some big dopamine hits. But let me know what you think, chat. Are you excited for any of these particular mods? What do you plan to use? This list is pretty crazy. Just really surprised by some of these, but very excited for the new power stuff. Hope you guys have a good one, and we'll see you soon.